Well, Razorback fans, I can tell you one thing that's true. John Calipari handles things a lot differently, and it's something we have to get used to. But what makes it so difficult in trying to figure out how different coaches handle different things? Let's talk about it on today's Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Neighbors. I am also the host of Inside Arkansas Live, which you catch every weekday starting at noon on Inside Arkansas and InsideArkansas.com. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Hope everybody's having a wonderful Tuesday, as once again, not a whole lot going on in transfer portal, basketball news, and all of those things, but we will get into a little bit of football and talking about position groups and actually which is better, if any of them are better. And also a favorite streak of mine that finally came to an end for the Razorbacks here recently. We'll get into that as well. But I wanted to start off the podcast today and addressing something that I know a lot of Razorback fans have, kind of like me, been trying to figure out, been trying to work our way through it, been trying to understand exactly what's going on with certain particular things. And what I mean by that is dealing with the transfer portal and John Calipari and how he handles it. Because, again, we see just how different these coaches are and can be when it comes to their handling of it. And there's no doubt that John Calipari is very different. He's very different from an Eric Musselman. He's very different from, a Bruce Pearl, whoever. He's just extremely different in handling it. And we start to see how it's all being approached and it's all being dealt with when it comes to the transfer portal. I was thinking about when just going through it all and looking at Arkansas and the situation they find themselves in. Like Malik Ewan is kind of the biggest one right now, where he is here. At least he tweeted out that he was here at Arkansas. All he simply said was, "Arkansas, on my visit, what's up?" Well, not too much, man. Do you mind, just making a decision real quick for us and coming to Arkansas? Do you want to do that for us? That'd be nice. But between him and, of course, somebody like Nick Pringle, which still waiting on him and his decision about the current players on the roster, all of that, it's just, it's being handled, and it's being handled differently. And I don't know about y'all, but I'm starting to get to the point to where you're not going to see the guys that are currently on the roster need to come out and say anything. What I mean by that is, like, I'm getting to the point where it's like, hey, Trevor Brazil's coming back, and the only reason you haven't heard one way or the other from him is because he's coming back, and there's no reason for him, in his mind, to say that he's coming back. He's just here. It's almost like the old school way of things. You just assume a player is going to stick around and be on the roster until he no longer is, or that he announces it. But if he's coming back, he's just going to come back. I feel the same way about Carter Knox. I'm starting to feel the same way about DJ Wagner. Same way about Billy Richmond. I believe that if these four guys in particular were going to go into the portal or whatnot, they would have already done it. Because this is the time where all these players are getting sought after. All the deals are being made via NIL. And I don't think that, I could be wrong, but I just don't think that any of these players would waste so much of this time frame of all these other rosters being added and all the money being spent, only to come out at the very last minute and be like, oh, wait, by the way, I'm entering the portal. And then it'd be all that. Like, I just don't think that would be the case. I think it'd be very dumb on their part. And I think it would be problematic on anyone's part to approach it that way too, regardless of if it's them or anybody else on the roster. So it's just got to the point where let's just go ahead and assume it. Like those guys are all coming back. Arkansas has all those players coming back. And if they don't come back, I don't think it's going to be because of entering into the transfer portal necessarily. I think it could be just going pro or making a decision, similar to Aduathero did. But I have confidence in that. I'm just at that point where I'm believing that's happening. And then you have, of course, the high school kids coming in. And we know that there's still some high school players that are being sought after from Arkansas, Nate Ament being one of them. And then you throw in the element of these transfers that I just mentioned. It's very possible that might be what the roster is next year. It's very possible that that's all it is. And because of that fact, I've looked at it through my own lens of if that ends up being the case for the Razorback roster, if it ends up being that, simply that, where those 4 players coming back on Arkansas's roster, you add in the 3 freshmen, I'd say 4 if you get Nate Ament, there's 8, and then you throw in 3 players out of the portal, 2 of these bigs, and then maybe somebody else. There it is. Like, your roster's set. Now, is that going to be a roster that I'll sit here and be like, national championship, not even close? Probably not. But it's a really dadgum good roster. And the one thing that was pointed out on my show yesterday was just about how, you have players that, or teams that had their players return this past season were the ones that were really good for the SEC, like Alabama, Auburn, Florida. These teams that made it to the Elite Eight and beyond, they all had that retention. They had multiple players, if not most of their players, at least most of their key contributors, returning from the year before. So it is crucial to have that, and it's crucial to have talent to go along with it. It's just a matter of fitting all the pieces together and getting it going in the right direction. So for what Arkansas's got going on, they're going to be fine. We all know that. But the approach that Cal has made is really, like, because I say this all the time, how I like looking at the ins and outs of behavior and personality, and how not only him as a person and as a coach handles it, but his coaching staff handles it. And so, yesterday, I know that there was not, you can call it conflicting reports, whatever it is, but yesterday there were some things coming out, and boom, boom, boom. You had some things of like, oh, well, what's going on here? Like, I hear that this guy's visiting, but then he's not actually visiting, but then he ends up going somewhere else anyways. And there's a lot of weirdness and everything that's going on. And so it's kind of getting to the point where, to be honest, it's like you don't know who to believe. You don't know what's real and what's not. That could be a lot to do with just the current state of how the players are. That could be a lot to do with just the current state of college athletics in general. But the one thing that I will give a lot of credit to Cal and how he handles these things, and whether, even though I may not like it, you probably won't like it, I think any of us will like it, but the way he handles it is, I'm keeping everything so on the down low and so hush-hush that you have no say. You have no idea what's going on. Like, you don't have nothing. Like, no, this is on me. This is on the team. This is on the staff. And I ain't going to give you nothing. Or it's something like Game of Thrones type stuff where he's like, they leak out a little bit of information. And then when the information gets public, they're like, all right, well, we know who leaked it out. We know who reported it. And then they know who to trust and who not to trust. It could be something like that. I don't know. Maybe I'm just making it a bigger deal than what it really is. But that's my whole point. That's my whole point in all of this. It's not about like making it into a what's a bigger deal and what's not. It can be something like with Cal. It could be something so simple. It could be something to where, like, I just laid out the roster being the way it is. It could be just that. And that's it. There was no other extra complications. There was no other craziness. There was no other issues. It was just, boop, that, done, moving on. Like, it could be and could end up being that simple. Or it could end up being extremely complicated. Maybe they're whiffing on some people. Maybe they're not able to get some of the players that they want because of reasons A, B, and C. Like, it could be all over the place. But that's the thing, that's what's making this such a frustrating but also intriguing approach that Cal has, because we haven't seen it before. Saw it a little bit last year, but last year everything was so new and, the fresh and the having to have a quick turnaround for the roster. Not to mention you had the entire high school class that Cal was bringing with them from the ones that were committed to Kentucky, and then bringing in the transfers from Kentucky. It's like the team was already kind of set. And so this is a whole different thing where, they're keeping it all very close to the chest. And I think that's fine. Like, as long as they get the team together, it's going to be handled. But Cal is just like everything else in his life and everything else that we've seen from him as a coach. He's so vastly different that it's almost hard to get into the mind, into the psyche of him, and being able to predict the behavior, be able to predict what's real and what's not, be able to predict who's doing what, be able to do any of those things. Like, it's really difficult to try to figure all that out. And we all want to have that information from the get-go. Like, we want to be able to say, hey, I know who this is, who we're after, and I know, this is the person we got. And, you want to be in the know, just like, we all want to be in the know. But I have never seen anything like this. And I don't think I've ever experienced anything like this. And maybe You know, those of Big Blue Nation, like, you get used to this. It's just about Cal, and this is what he does. Like, well, maybe there's a little bit more to it. You know, maybe this is a little bit different than what it was at Kentucky. But still, it's taken a little bit to get used to. But the behaviors and the approach that Cal has is something that I actually respect, because in the day of social media and in this day and age, to keep a lid on everything that you have going on inside of your program, where you're dealing with players, you're dealing with representations, agents, you're dealing with NIL, you're dealing with other teams and competing with it. For it to be as low key as it is, yet they're working, but they're working in the shadows. To me, that is incredible. How you're able to do that, how you're able to keep everything so away from any sort of public knowledge. Not even talking about local media, I'm talking about national media. Like, that takes skill, that takes a lot of power and a lot of effort. But once again, it just proves to me why Cal is one of the best in the business at doing what he does, because no coach wants anything ever to get out unless they want it to. We know that they'll leak out some information here and there, but no coach just wants things to come out. They always want it to be done their way. They want to be in control of the information, control of the narrative, and be able to have it all that way. It's a very difficult thing to do in the modern age of social media and the way things are going and approached. But my thing is that you can look at it as a frustrating thing. You can look at it as, oh, maybe Cal doesn't know what he's doing, or maybe you can look at it all these different ways, shapes, and forms. The way I look at it, the way I simply look at it, is that Cal is just really good. And everything that he does when it comes to the game of basketball and the college basketball, especially recruiting, he's the best at. No other coach has been able to keep this as closely guarded as Cal. And it's a respect thing. I respect him for it, because I want to know. Everyone's just chomping at the bit. I want to know. And nobody's got nothing. Well, he's nothing concrete, nothing that's really come out and come to fruition. And to me, that is an impressive feat for John Calipari. The man is extremely different, but he's different in only the best of ways. And I think his roster is going to prove that here very soon. I will talk a little football in position groups coming up next year on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast, so stay with us. All right, Razorback fans, there's nothing like an atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's an electric type of feel in the arena, and with Game Time, you can be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when the demand is extremely high. Prices on the app actually go down as the tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. Here's why you have to use Game Time, because this is why I use Game Time. Last-minute deals. Save up to 60%. That's right, 60% off by buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater shows, the whole works. The all-in pricing means no surprise fees at checkout, and you see the price, and that's what you pay. Simple as that. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app and create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, so moving on into the next segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. You know, we're slow and surely getting back into the swing of things for football, which I appreciate people's comments on the football side of things the last podcast we have, because we kind of led off with it and discussing the spring football elements that, I know, or what we think we know. And in a lot of cases may not have any idea. But yeah, spring game is going to be coming up. It's at 1 o'clock on Saturday. It looks like it's going to rain on Saturday, which is just peachy keen. And it always feels like the spring game is like, I just hate the fact that the weather's nice during the week and the weekend's weather has not been great. I guess this past weekend was fine, but I wasn't here. I wasn't here to appreciate and enjoy it. I was in Hot Springs, which I still enjoyed, mind you. But still, I'm just like, I'm hoping that they can, for sure, Razorback baseball, that's the important thing. But if they end up moving the game indoors, it sucks. But I just don't really know what the attendance would look like, even if the weather was great for the spring games. And that's not an Arkansas thing. That's just college football thing in general. That's just not what it used to be when it comes to the approach of how the spring game goes and all that. But what I wanted to bring up is just about the position group, because somebody asked me, he's like, why are you so down on the Razorback football team? Why do you feel like it's going to be such a downer of a year? And I don't think anybody was coming to me in a way of like attacking me, saying like, how dare you say that this is going to be a bad year? I think it was just honestly curious, because people, again, know that I'm more optimistic. And who knows, maybe once we get closer, I feel a little bit better about it. But I'm going to be hard pressed if that ends up being the case. But when you have so many different pieces that get thrown into rosters, and especially this year, and knowing Arkansas had to replace so much, it's just a matter of looking at it in a simple way. And this is how I usually try to look at it when it comes to like guessing how good a team is going to be, how interesting they're going to be, and all that. It goes back to the direction you're going, the trajectory you have. You could look back and be like, all right, well, Arkansas went 4-8. They went 7-6 this past year. So therefore, they should be on the right trajectory. Well, that's not necessarily true, and not necessarily going to be the case, because it's about position groups. That's the way I break it down. I'll break it down in position groups. And I look at it of like, okay, all the position groups, which group do I feel like far and away, or at least convincingly, no argument's sake, but just convincingly, is going to be better this year than what it was last year? And I'm not talking about guesses, and I'm not even talking about, well, they got more depth or anything like that. I'm talking about ones that I look at it on paper and I'm like, that's better. Or at least developing and having players back, retention, all that, better. And folks, there's really not a single one of those on the team right now. It's not to say that there's not a chance, or that it couldn't be. Like, for instance, the tight end room. There's nothing that I look at when I say the tight end room is just like, oh, there's zero chance they'll be better than what they were last year, although, because they didn't get used a whole lot. But it's like, quarterback. Okay, quarterback will be just as good because you have Taylor Green. I think Malachi Singleton was really good. But, I have faith in KJ Jackson. I have faith in the Madden kid. And so, is there a chance that it is better? I guess, yeah, there's a chance, but there's nothing that I'm just like, oh, for sure, going to be better. Running back position, I don't see there's any way you're going to be better. I think Jaquinton Jackson, when he was healthy, was as good as running back as anybody, especially in the SEC. And you don't have him anymore. You don't have Rashad Dubinion anymore. So those types of players, it's like, you got some guys added into the mix. You got Braylon Russell back, but, am I looking at that and saying bona fide for sure better? No. Wide receiver, same thing. Andrew Armstrong was arguably the best wide receiver in the SEC last season, and he's no longer here. You lost Isaac TeSlaa. You lost Isaiah Satania. You lost some players that really played a whole bunch, and Taylor Green got used to throwing the ball to them, and they're not here anymore. They're all gone. You replaced some of them, but as Bobby Petrino said, it wasn't necessarily built. You didn't replace the size, you replaced the speed. So am I sitting here saying that, Arkansas's wide receivers are bona fide for sure going to be better this year than what they were last year? No. Offensive line. Can it be? Sure. But will it be? No. I mean, not on paper. Because I felt like the offensive line was fine. It wasn't great. But, Addison Nichols goes to SMU, a team that was at in the playoffs. Josh Braun goes to Kentucky. You got Patrick Kutas going to Ole Miss. You could say that those teams were in better situations, or at least a better setups than what you had, and you lost players to them. You have Carmona coming back. You got the kid from Oregon that's coming in. You have some pieces there. But again, it goes back to, can I for sure say on paper, yeah, the offensive line will be better? No. Tight end, we already talked about that. Defensive line, Landon Jackson's not on the team. You don't have anyone that comes close to Landon Jackson on that defensive line. So, no, it's not going to be better. Linebacker, I mean, it could be just as good. You got Xavier Sori coming back, so that's very helpful. But you lost a few key pieces in the linebacker room. Is I saying it's going to be for sure better? No. Same thing in the secondary. You lost some key pieces. You lost your two starters. You lost the safety. I don't care what anybody says. Hudson Clark was an important piece. But you lose Jalen Braxton. You lose Marquise Robinson. Can they be replaceable? Sure. But did you replace them with just as good, if not better, players? I don't know. I don't think so. So the point is, and I say all that to say, that's where my whole belief comes from. Forget the schedule and all that. That's a whole nother animal. But if you talk about the position groups themselves, there's just not really any position groups I look at and say, oh, yeah, for sure better. Where last year compared to the year before, I was like, oh, yeah, quarterback's going to be better. Oh, yeah, offensive line's going to be better. Oh, yeah, running back's going to be better. Oh, yeah, tight ends are going to be better. At least that's what I felt like going into it. defensive line next. You felt so much better about it because of who you had and all the retention. There's no retention. There's nobody that's really coming back that's part of the team. I mean, there are a few players, obviously, but just not the ones you were expecting and not the ones you would believe in. So there's that. Favorite streak to come to end. I'll explain what I mean by this. So stay with us here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. All right, Razorback fans, you ever check your bank account and wonder where all my money go? Between dining out and online shopping and entertainment, it's easy to lose track, but that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over all of your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So you stop just managing your money and actually start building your wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much money I was spending on food delivery, and it was pretty sad. Also, my physical health didn't exactly appreciate it all the time either. But now I budget even smarter, and I save a lot more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finance, track your spending, and even plan on long-term goals. Easy collaboration that you can have, too, when it comes to all of your apps, because it's also not just about on your phone, but it's also about with your partner. It's making it smoother than ever to manage that money, and you can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without all the stress that comes along with it. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use Locked On College as a promo code. That's right, Locked On College at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code Locked On College for half off your first year. All right, so final segment here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Favorite streak to come to an end for the Razorbacks. Here's what I mean by this, because you're probably wondering, what is that? I thought about it the other day when I saw the Masters and saw Rory be able to finally get to that career Grand Slam and win the Masters. That was the one he was missing. And how people said, like, hey, finally. It was and how much he was celebrated. We talk about winning streaks and good streaks that are always good. And you hate when those come to an end. But I'm talking about the losing streaks. I'm talking about the stuff that you struggled, not being able to get over the hill. What are some of the ones that you celebrated the most there? And for what I saw with, Arkansas in particular, I'm not talking about a championship. Like, yeah, duh. If Arkansas baseball won a championship this year, it'd be like, yeah, that'd be my favorite one. Yeah, no kidding. I'm talking about more of specific things. And for instance, like to me, my favorite one is about the Sweet 16. When that streak finally came to an end of not making the Sweet 16 from 1996 to 2021. It was an absurd amount of time, and it was ridiculous that it took that long, but that one was great. If you think about, Arkansas finally beating Texas A&M after that long drought, it didn't last very long because then they ended up beating you all the other times again. But it was at least like, all right, well, that came to an end. Finally enjoyed that part of it. Good on you. Finally got it done. So you had that. Again, you could go on and on about some streaks and like that too that kind of helped out a little bit. But you could say Arkansas going so long without ever signing a 5-star basketball player. Arkansas going so long without having a 3,000-yard passer. Arkansas going so long without, and if it's in baseball or whatever, to having a hitter that hits over 400. Something like that. There's just so many things that I think about and that really come to my mind. And, that was always my thing, is I just celebrated those. Some people even said the LSU game of 2014 when Arkansas beat them in football and it ended that 17-game losing streak or whatever it was in SEC play. Felt really good to finally get that monkey off your back. So anyways, debate amongst yourselves what you think is your favorite streak to come to an end for the Razorbacks. I just gave you a few examples, but I'm curious to know all of your thoughts. And you can always just let me know or get into the comments section, because I know that's always a fun place to be, especially when y'all are yelling at me anyways. So either way, appreciate it, though. Each and every one of you listening in and watching into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast, be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or on Google Play. You can also get after me on Twitter at John Neighbors Show for any questions, comments, concerns that you may have. We'll keep it going from there. Same podcast time, same podcast channel tomorrow afternoon. Have a great day, everybody. See you then.